Some people make progress with money that feels almost unfair, not because they earn dramatically more, not because they're financial geniuses, and not because they have some secret investment trick nobody told you about, but because they think about money differently. And that difference quietly changes everything. You've probably seen this before. Two people making similar incomes, living in the same world, facing the same prices, same economy, same pressure, but somehow, one person always seems to be building something, while the other keeps resetting, trying harder, getting temporary momentum, then slipping back again. And from the outside, it doesn't make sense, because the person getting ahead doesn't always look smarter, or more disciplined, or even more ambitious. That's what makes this frustrating. Because if the difference were obvious, it would be easy to fix. But a lot of the biggest financial differences don't start in bank accounts. They start in interpretation, how people emotionally process spending, what they believe money is for, what success feels like, what discomfort means, what progress looks like. Two people can look at the exact same financial decision and experience it completely differently. One sees freedom, the other sees deprivation. One sees delayed reward, the other sees missing out. One sees flexibility, the other sees, I worked hard, I deserve this. Same money, completely different internal experience. And over time, that gap becomes enormous, because money is never just money. That sounds obvious, but most people don't actually behave like it. A dollar is supposed to be neutral, objective, simple math, but emotionally, it rarely works that way. The same $2,000 can mean completely different things to different people. To one person, it feels like relief, permission to finally breathe, a reason to reward themselves, proof that they're doing okay. To someone else, that same money feels like optionality, a buffer, a future decision that just became easier. Less fragility, more room, same amount, different meaning. And that difference matters more than people realize, because people like to imagine financial success as mostly math, income, budgeting, interest rates, percentages. And yes, those things matter. But behavioral finance exists for a reason, because human beings are not spreadsheets. People make emotional decisions first, then create rational explanations afterward. That's not an insult, that's normal psychology. That's why smart people make bad financial decisions all the time. Not because they're stupid, because intelligence doesn't automatically override emotion. A highly educated person can absolutely convince themselves that a bad purchase is reasonable. I've been working nonstop. This isn't even that expensive. Everyone spends money on something. I deserve to enjoy my life too. And the scary part? Those thoughts don't sound irrational. That's what makes them effective. Because financial self-sabotage rarely feels dramatic. It usually feels justified. And the people who build wealth differently, they're not immune to emotion. They just interpret those emotional moments differently. Imagine two people getting a raise. Same amount, same exact increase. One person immediately starts mentally upgrading life. Better apartment, nicer dinners, maybe finally getting the car they've wanted. Because emotionally, the raise means progress, life expansion, permission, and honestly, that reaction makes sense. If you worked hard, why wouldn't you want life to feel better? But someone else sees the same raise differently, not as permission, as acceleration, a faster emergency fund, more investing, more breathing room, less dependence on the next paycheck. Same raise, completely different emotional conclusion. And this is where the gap starts getting massive, because repeated emotional interpretation becomes behavior, and repeated behavior becomes financial outcomes. That's why some people feel stuck for years without making obviously terrible decisions. Because the issue isn't usually one catastrophic mistake, it's emotional patterning. And one of the biggest differences is time horizon. Wealth builders tend to emotionally think further ahead, not perfectly, not robotically, just differently. Most people know delayed gratification matters. That's not groundbreaking. But knowing something intellectually and emotionally feeling it are not the same thing. If I offer someone $500 worth of immediate pleasure, shopping, a weekend trip, upgrades, dopamine, that feels real, immediate, concrete, but future financial flexibility, that's abstract. It's emotionally weaker. Humans naturally discount the future. Behavioral finance has shown this repeatedly. Immediate rewards feel disproportionately powerful. Future rewards feel vague. That's why people don't usually lose financially because they can't do math. They lose because the emotional weight of now is stronger than the emotional weight of later. And wealth builders often reverse that dynamic. They emotionally value future freedom more. That's a mindset difference, not because they're joyless, not because they hate spending, because they emotionally assign more value to optionality. And that changes choices. Then there's something even less comfortable: emotional discomfort tolerance. This might be one of the biggest differences of all. Because a lot of financially better decisions feel bad in the short term. Driving the practical car, saying no, skipping upgrades, not joining expensive social plans, living below what your income could technically support, that can feel emotionally uncomfortable, sometimes embarrassing, sometimes restrictive, sometimes like you're falling behind. And this is where people get confused, because they assume feeling bad means something is wrong. But often, the financially healthier decision creates short-term emotional friction. That friction is normal. The problem is when people interpret discomfort as failure. If buying less makes you feel deprived, you may overcorrect. If not upgrading makes you feel unsuccessful, you may spend to soothe that feeling. If being practical makes you feel invisible, you may start buying identity. And that brings us to another huge difference. A lot of spending is identity spending. People rarely buy only the object. They buy what the object represents: status, belonging, proof, respect, security, progress. A nicer car might not actually be about transportation, it might be about feeling like life is finally working. Luxury clothes might not be about fabric, they might be about identity, looking put together, looking successful, looking like someone who matters. And when spending becomes identity-based, logic gets weaker, because now the purchase is emotional self-definition. That's much harder to challenge, which is why two people can make similar incomes, and one quietly builds wealth while the other keeps leaking it. Because one asks, "What does this cost?" And the other asks, "What does this say about me?" Very different questions. And maybe the most important difference of all: wealth builders often think in optionality. Most people ask, "Can I afford this?" Which sounds responsible, but it's often incomplete, because technically affording a payment doesn't mean a decision is harmless. A better question is, what does this remove? What flexibility disappears? What future options shrink? What stress gets added? What dependency gets created? Because a lot of financial decisions don't hurt immediately, they hurt by reducing future freedom. That's the hidden cost. And people who build wealth tend to notice that faster, not because they're morally superior, not because they never make mistakes, but because they emotionally value flexibility differently. That's the mindset gap. It's not affirmations, not fake motivational nonsense, not just think rich. It's behavioral psychology, how your brain defines reward, how you interpret progress, how you react to discomfort, what spending means emotionally. And once you start noticing that, a lot of financial behavior makes way more sense. The person who looks disciplined may actually be emotionally stressed. The person who looks boring may actually be building enormous freedom. The flashy spender may feel successful while becoming financially fragile. And the quiet, practical person may look behind while becoming increasingly secure. That's the irony. People think wealth builders know some hidden financial secret. Usually, they just emotionally relate to money differently. And over enough time, that difference becomes life-changing.